Okay, class, good morning. Now, if you remember, this is just simply the continuation of what I have told you about the DNA. Now, the concept is that we actually started from this form of life, being a chimpanzee, and now we have progressed to become this form until we reach this form, a tall and erect person. So, but this is the truth of our evolutionary process. But the next question is, why this chimpanzee turn out to be this man? And then I am going to explain it to you now what happened. Okay, we begin with the chimpanzee. So actually, okay, ako ni siya i-drawing ha. Kining chimpanzee sa una, kini siya. Kini, oh. Naguya ra na siya sa mga kahoy. Dinha, sa mga kahoy. Tapos ana na siya, magdagan-dagan na siya. Tapos another kahoy diri na pod, ana na siya dinha, mulakso ra pod na siya. So in other words, happy lang kaayo yang kinabuhi kay nganuman kini na mga kahoy daghan kaayo prutas, pagkatapos kon ing kaso mahurot na diri ang fruit salad, mulakso na pod na siya sa lain na kahoy kay para mukaon na pod na siya. Life was beautiful then for about millions of years. But then, suddenly, naay nahitabo. And what was that? It may be brought about by the climate change, but what is really very, hama na to na ako erase. What really happened is that all of these trees, itong mga trees na to, actually died out. So, nangamatay ang mga trees, and then, only few are left. Kana na siya. And then, what really happened is actually, there is now the rise of a new plants, which is actually grasses. Huh? So, grass ang naitubo. So, this is bad news for this chimpanzee because why? In case mahurot na ang iyang fruit salad din ha sa anak na tree, unsa may iyang next na hitboon, kinahalan man na og jud na siya, pagkatapos mag-ingon na siya. Kana mukamang nanapod na siya for another tree. Now, problema ni na situation. Kaya nga naman, ang bali, ang kini siya, kana, mag-ingon naman na siya, ha? Kana. Problema ana siya na situation, kaya inikanaog na niya, kay para mukadto na po sa another tree, kini siya na posisyon na to with our earliest ancestor, buti pasabot, nakita na himo na tag pray. So, sa may pray, buti pasabot na himutag kanunon na lamang. Kay nga naman, kung naay lion diri, naay mga tiger diri, sus Jesus Christ, dali radyog ka makaon nila. And during this time, there were already a lot of savage animals in Africa. So, na problema na jud na siya. So, the next steps that he's going to make is this step. So, unsa may nabuti pasabot, he has to stand straight. Why? Kung kanang mag-straight kag stand, nga naman, pag magtindog na ka dire, kana. Pagkatapos makakita kag na tiger, ay, saka kag balik, ho? Pero kung makakita kag wala na tiger, wala ni lion, dagan yot. Pwede na dayon ka makadagan, makaadto na kasalain na kahoy. So, this position, kini na maka-stand erecta, is actually our advantage. But then, another thing happened to us. So, one stage is that the standing straight, maoy unang nahitabo sa ato evolutionary process. Nakatindog ta pag straight. So, wala na ta mahimo na prey sa mga predator, kung dili, pwede na ta karon makadagan-dagan, kaya nga naman nakita naman nato sila. And then the next step is this: we were able to what? Kini, develop tools. So nga naman importante man in develop tools, because if you're going to compare really our earliest ancestor, we are still not that good in combating lion or tiger. But using these tools, kana siya, we now have an advantage. Okay. So, unsa may nahitabo kadtong sa mga grasses nga to? Earlier, kumbaga, this is actually what? This is a curse. Murag bad luck para sa ato. But somewhere in Africa, sa place sa Africa, on the Fertile Crescent, kadtong Fertile Crescent. So, unsa man ning Fertile Crescent? This is actually what? This is a part of Egypt as well as Mesopotamia. So, ngano man na gitawag man na silang Fertile Crescent? Kay kana na place, because of the what? River Nile or the Nile River. Mao na balitaw kung mingong kang what is actually the birth of civilization. Mo answer ta anak either Egypt or mo-answer mo anak Mesopotamia, Mesopotamia. So kana. Okay. Now, kana silang duha ka places din kining Egypt. Like Egypt, ngano man na siya considered the Fertile Crescent man na siya because of the river Nile. Because of the Nile River. Pero kining Mesopotamia, unsa maiyang kwan ana? That means between two rivers. So unsa man ang mga two rivers ato? These are actually what? Your Tigris and Euphrates. River. So, okay. Now, mana naatay problema ini kay ngano man. Nayuban mo ingon na actually jud ang first civilization does not occur in Egypt but rather Mesopotamia. I think they're also correct. Ngano man, dinhi sa Mesopotamia naa diri ang first language or first form of written language. Katong kadumdum mo katong cuneiform, kana siya. Ana na siya nato matrace din sa place na Mesopotamia. Pero kanang Egypt was more enduring compared to Mesopotamia. Ngano man mas nag-endure man ang Egypt compared sa Mesopotamia. Ngano man kay kining Egypt, kining Nile River, mas nindot ni siya. Kining Nile River. Kay ngano man, kung tao pa ni, kung laki pa ni siya, gentleman ni siya. Buti pasabot kung kuha na siya, mo overflow na siya, dili kaayo grabe. In other words, kung naghatag fertile soil nga to sa along the banks of Egypt, kana po siya dili kaayo grabe mo overflow. So walay murag more of a blessing ana siya. Pero kining Tigris o Euphrates River naa ni problema kay kining duha ka panga river grabe jud kaayo kung laki pud na siya dili na siya gentleman. May pagkabastos na siya. Ngano man grabe jud na siya mo overflow. In other words, nangamatay itong mga Mesopotamia ng mga tao. Pagkatapos another thing, ang culture ini ng mga tao kining taga Mesopotamia, mga warlike individual. Mas nag-enjoy sila makigira-gira-gira. Pero ang Egypt is a peace-loving kuan people. And then mangutan ako sa inyo. Ngano man, di ba, nag-ingon man ta diri, nganong naingon man ta diri, earliest na nganong kining earliest hominids nato, nganong nakaingon ta ini. Because kining grasses, na murag nahimog malas diri para diri sa mga unggoy, nahimo pud ni siya karon na blessings. So in other words, from curse to blessing. So, gikan sa sumpa na siya ngadto sa blessing. Ngano man nahimo naman siya blessings? Kaya ngano man, actually, kung mingong ka-grass, ayaw dyan siya pag-una-hunaan na useless na. Kay kanang atong rice, that is an example of grass. Ang scientific name ana is Oryza sativa, which is actually grass. Pati ka ng mga wheat sa kanang hinangong gani natog arena, grasses na siya. Ngano man nahimo naman na siya ngarong bali nato na certain na. Kay ngano man on the river Nile, kini dire o sa Tigris and Euphrates River, we now can launch into the first evolution in our life, and that is what the agricultural revolution. So, unsay nahitabo sa ato? Agricultural nang ano man, hindi naman musulat. Revolution. So, unsa na may nahitabo kining agricultural revolution? Ang pinakauna na nahitabo diri sa atong agricultural revolution, dili na kita, kay kita diri na time, hunter-gatherer ta. Manghanap ta kanang kuan. Kung naipagkaon diri, mumove ta. Ato na pag, like for example, diri sa Surigao, hunter-gatherer ta. Pag bunga na ang mga bunga diri, anita. Pagkatapos kung mahurot na sab, mubiyahe na punta. Ato na punta nga to sa itong Kantiasay, kung asa tangad to. So in other words, we really do not have a permanent residency. But with agricultural revolution, it means to say we can stay in one place and we'll have what? A steady supply of food. So maotoy una na nahitabo sa ato sa kini diri kita nga rin ng mga hunter gatherer na utro na ta, dili na ta kinahanglan magbiyahe-biyahe pa. And then you know what, because there is now a steady supply of food, our population start to what? To increase. Okay. Now, unsa may nahitabo na dayon pag-start na nato pag-increase sa atong population? Ang atong na fourth nahitabo diri is that we now start to migrate from one place to another. So, unsa na may nahitabo ron? We started in Egypt and Mesopotamia. So we started, actually, practically speaking, we started in Africa, and now we try to move from one place to another. So gikan ta tanan sa Africa, pagkatapos ni-move na dayong punta ngadto sa lain na lugar. So unsa may ni nahitabo? Gikan nato, pagsugod nato diri sa Africa, no-move na ta ngadto from one place. So ngano base ka mo imingon na murag lisod man kaayo i-move from one place to another. Don't you worry, during this time there was this ice age. So unsa may nahitabo kanang gitawag natog ice age? Buti pasabot ana na sa una ang atong level sa mga dagat mubo kaayo. So there were land bridges connecting from one continent to another, and therefore it is easy to move from Africa to Europe and to the other parts of the world. So we were able to what? Populate a lot of part in the world because of our agricultural revolution. Now, pagkatapos ining atong agricultural revolution, musulod na punta sa the next stage of revolution. And this stage is what you call now your from agricultural revolution din ha. Atong next stage is what you call the industrial revolution. So unsa may ni industrial revolution? So kini siya na revolution, actually this is started during what? The Renaissance period. Ngano man mingon kung Renaissance period. So this is most likely about the 15th century, because this is the time when what? From agricultural revolution, we now was able to what? Discover machines. So, kining industrial revolution, ang kitang mga tao sa una was actually bounded with land, and that is simply the source of our productivity. Pero karon sa industrial revolution, it is actually the machines that is taking over us, and now that industrial revolution has again propelled this man to move from one place to another. So what is the result of this industrial revolution? There is actually now the creation of big cities. So dagko na kaayo ang mga syudad, ni dagko ang mga syudad. Kung naa siya ay mga paktorya din na, ngadto na ang tanan tao mo kadto kay adto mo trabaho, because they know that working in land is really very hard. So muduyog na ta from move na ta from being agriculture now to being industrial. So dumduma ha. So kung makadumdum ta during the agricultural revolution, kinsa may mga dato ini, the kings and queens, kay ngano man they own the land, they own the property. Pero pag industrial revolution na nato, nautro na ang tanan. Kay ngano man sa industrial revolution, unsa na may nahitabo, dili na kadtong kings and queens. As a matter of fact, during this time of industrial revolution, we also see the simultaneous decline of the monarchy. Nagkawala na sila kay ngano man industrialization has led to another form of economy, of which it is no longer the kings and the queens who has the absolute control of their subjects because they own the land, but this time it is actually the industrialists who become very, very rich and very, very influential. So, kung imo na dumduman kining sa industrial revolution, kinsa may nga dato ini, sila Rockefeller, industrialist, kana sila maunay nahimo na dato. And then actually wala pa ni matapos kining industrial revolution. After the 15th century, we now move to the next revolution, of which we are in as of now, which is actually the information or the digital information revolution. So, or the computer revolution. So, in other words, our time right now is actually the digital information revolution. So ngano man ni nahitabo man ni this time balitaw, di ba, kadang tanan ang atong mga amigo, atong mga amiga, dali na lang nato sila matawag. It is simply because through our cell phone. Dali ra kayo. In other words, there is now a shrinkage of the total expand of earth as simply a small village. It is simply because of the new technologies that we have, and that is the digital information. So kinsa man ni diri sa atong sa digital information nato pod na nga dato, of course sila na ni Bill Gates, kay sila na may nag-control ini. Okay? So, pag-control na nila Bill Gates ini, sila na karon ang nahimo pod na pinakadato sa atong kalibutan because they own the most powerful tool in human progress. Now, there is a prediction that the next stage will no longer be this one, the information, but it is actually the AI revolution. And what do you mean by the AI revolution? This is the artificial intelligence. And this is where I want you to realize, kinahanglan inigabot ng AI, the artificial intelligence, na atay problema ani. Kay kitang mga matutapa dili kaayo ka-adjust ini. This is something that is really very detrimental to us. So as of now, kinahanglan kabalo jud ta kung unsay mahitabo what will happen next, because remember during the Industrial Revolution, a lot of people were actually out of jobs because the machines are taking over. Now karon information revolution also, unsa may nahitabo, daghan na po kaayo ang nawad-an og trabaho, although there is now a shrinkage of the size or the size of the earth. We simply become a global village, but there is also a lot of problem that is being created by the information revolution, and much more with the AI, the artificial intelligence. So that would be all. Okay, thank you.